Automation scope in Agile software development. Automation scope in Agile software development. I can also say this way, how automation fits in Agile software development. That is what I will explain or demonstrate in this tutorial video. MD Shahajada Imran, that is my full legal name. Lemon, that is my nickname. And I show one of my picture. This is me. So I have identified about 6 different scopes that we can implement in Agile software development. In Agile environment, we can implement 6 different. Actually, there are so many. I have identified 6 that I will demonstrate or explain. So before the first one is automation regression and functional testing. Automation regression and functional testing. That is the first one. I will demonstrate this one. This is what I will demonstrate first. So before that, before I demonstrate, I need to know some prerequisite. There are some prerequisite that I need to understand. Those are what is regression testing, or what we do in the regression testing. In the automation regression testing, we test existing functionality didn't break by a code change. We test existing functionality. On the other hand, in functional testing, we test newly introduced functionality working fine as per acceptance criteria of the user story. In Agile development, user story is everything. All the tasks happened based on user story. So Agile development is user story centric. Each user story has acceptance criteria and link of functional requirements, use case, GUI mockup. A good standard user story will have this. Will have acceptance criteria, also have link which will refer to functional requirements, use case, GUI mockups, etc. So the main difference between regression testing and functional testing, that in regression testing we test existing functionality, and in functional testing we test new functionality. In regression testing, existing or old functionality. In functional testing, we test new functionality. That is the main difference between regression testing and functional testing. And there are some common terminologies that are used in Agile software development. Those are use case, functional requirements document, GUI mockup, user stories, epics, product backlog, sprint backlog, release backlog, client demo, retrospective meetings, sprint planning meetings, daily stand-up meetings, product owner Scrum Master, Automation Engineer, Business Analyst, Test Lead, Developers, Agile Coach, Story Points, Brand Charts, Automation Architect. So there are many terminologies which are used. I give some example. These are some examples. There are many terminologies that are used in Agile software development. If we understand this, what are the terminologies used in Agile development and how those terminologies work, if we understand, then it will be easy for us to understand how automation fits in Agile environment. So that is prerequisite that we understand what is regression testing, what is functional testing, how Agile software development works, and what are the words or terminologies used in Agile development. So if we understand this, then it will be easy for us to understand how automation fits in Agile development. So this is prerequisite that I have explained, that we need to know before we try to understand how automation fits in Agile development. So the first one, there are 6 that I will be explaining. The first one is automation, regression, and functional testing within a sprint. That is the first one I will explain. So this is a scenario. The model is automation N-1 model. This is a scenario. Let's say we have n number of sprints on the project. Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. Let's say we are on sprint 4. At this time we are on sprint 4. So sprint 4 is running. Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3 closed, and sprint 4 is running. We are on sprint 4. In sprint 1 we had 5 user stories, and we have 8 automation scripts. Also in sprint 2 we have also 5 user stories. What happened in sprint planning, the entire team brings some user stories from the product backlog into the sprint backlog, and then once user stories are in the sprint backlog, everyone works on the user stories which are in the sprint. So in sprint 2, 5 user stories has been taken, and I have created 10 automation scripts. In sprint 3 also 5 user stories has been taken, and I have created 4 automation scripts. And in sprint 4 I haven't created any automation scripts. I have created 6 manual test cases. These 3 are automation scripts. In sprint 1 this is a closed sprint, sprint 2 also closed sprint, sprint 3 also closed sprint, sprint 4 is open sprint. And I have created automation scripts for these 3 sprints, and I haven't created any automation scripts in sprint 4. Let me open a new Word document. So I have 8, 10, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 automation scripts. So I have total 22 automation scripts. I have total 22 automation scripts. And 6 manual test cases. 6 test cases. This is the scenario. This is the scenario. There are n number of sprints. 3 sprints are closed. Sprint 4 is open. We are on sprint 4, and we have total 22 automation scripts from sprint 1 to sprint 3. Sprint 1 to sprint 3. And we have 6 manual test cases from sprint 4. This is the scenario. Now that I have this scenario, on sprint 4 I will execute. On sprint 4, when sprint 4 is running, I will execute these 22 automation scripts, and I manually execute these 6 manual test cases. So this one is regression testing. This one is regression testing. We know the definition. In regression testing, we test existing functionality, and in this scenario these 3 sprints are closed. Means those functionalities are old functionality or existing functionality, and we are executing automation scripts, 22 automation scripts, and this is functional testing. Right, executing the manual test cases, this is functional testing. Because we are executing new user stories. This sprint has not closed yet, it's still open. The developers will write a code for each user story. QA team already wrote 6 manual test cases, so QA team will execute, and then QA team will give demo to the product owner. Product owner will accept. Then all the and then QA team will give official sign up. Then all the user stories will be closed, and a sprint also will be closed. But at this time, sprint 4 is open. Developers are working on it, and the QA team parallelly wrote these 6 manual test cases. So this is one scope that we can implement automation. We can implement since in sprint 4 we don't have a scope. We cannot. We don't have a scope in sprint 4 because it is open. The model is automation in -1 model, and sprint is open. Developers is working on the user stories. The QA team wrote manual test cases. We don't have a scope in sprint 4, but in sprint 1, 2, and 3, when we are in sprint 4, in this sprint 4 we are executing these 22 automation scripts and also executing these 6 manual test cases. So this is one scope, regression testing scope, and we do not have any automation scope for functional testing on a sprint on the model automation in -1 model, because automation is 1 sprint behind. We are in sprint 4 and automation 1, 2, 3. We don't have any automation activities belongs to sprint 4. Since automation is 1 sprint behind, that's why the model is called automation in -1 model. So I have mentioned that what is the scope. This is one scope. This is where we can implement automation. So this is one automation scope, regression testing. Functional testing is not in a scope when the model is automation in -1 model. Then functional testing is not in scope. Now there is another model. Now there is another model that is called automation in model. In automation in model, I do not have any manual test cases. This everything was in this everything belongs to automation in -1 model. When the model is automation in -1 model, this is the scenario. Now I have automation in model. Automation in model. In automation in -1 model, I only have a scope, automation scope for regression testing. I do not have automation scope for functional testing. But in automation in model, this is the automation in model, I will not write manual test cases, even though the same scenario is same. There are n number of sprints, and currently sprint 4 is running, or sprint 4 is open. Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, these 3 sprints are closed. Sprint 4 is open, and developers are working on these 5 user stories. On the other hand, the QA team created automation script, did not create any manual test cases. The model is automation in model, and the QA team created 6 automation scripts, did not write any manual test cases. In this scenario, I will have 22 and 6, 28 automation scripts. 28 automation scripts. 28 automation scripts from sprint 1 to sprint 4. From sprint 1 to sprint 4, I have 8, 18, 22, and 8 plus 10, total 18, 18 plus 4, 22, 22 plus 6, 28. So I have total 28 automation scripts, 0 manual test cases. Zero manual test cases. Out of 28 scripts, 22 scripts belongs to sprint 1 to sprint 3, and 6 automation scripts belongs to sprint 4. So here we are, this one is functional testing, and this 22, executing this 22 scripts is regression testing, and executing these 6 automation scripts is functional testing. Based on the definition, if we see the definition again, in regression testing we test existing functionality, and in functional testing we test new functionality. So in this scenario, these 3 sprints are closed. That means these 5 user stories are old user stories or existing functionalities, and the automation scripts testing those existing functionalities, this 22, 8, 10 and 4, total 22. This 22 automation scripts is testing the existing functionalities. Therefore, that is regression testing, and that is regression testing. Regression testing, and this one is functional testing. functional testing. So now we understand the scope. We can also do functional testing. Using automation scripts. So here, instead of manual test cases, I have used automation scripts. If we can achieve that, if we can skip writing manual test cases and executing manual test cases, directly write automation scripts and execute automation scripts, then that model is called automation N model. That model is called automation N model. In automation N model, we will not have any manual test cases. We will have only automation scripts, and the automation scripts that belongs to the open sprint or current sprint, executing those automation scripts are functional testing, and the automation scripts that belongs to closed sprints, those are regression testing. So now we know how we can implement or add automation in the model automation N model. So now if we go here, the first one, I also explained how we can do functional testing using automation scripts. Usually we use automation scripts for regression testing, but there are situations we can also use automation script for functional testing, and this is one example. If the model is automation N model, then we can do functional testing using automation scripts. So I have explained or demonstrated how we can do regression testing and functional testing within the sprint when we are in the sprint 4. I am in sprint 4. I belongs to the Agile team, and inside of the sprint 4, when the sprint 4 is open, this is how we can do the testing and implement automation. So I hope we understand the first scope or area how we can implement automation. And the second one is, I will explain the second one now. Second one is automation regression testing before releases. So if I go to the same one, let's say we have total n number of sprints: sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and at the end of sprint 10, for example, at the end of sprint 10, there is a production release. There is a production release. There is a production release. At the end of 10th sprint or at the 10th sprint, we will have production release. Just an example. And I create on an average 5 automation scripts per sprint. So 5 times 9 equal to 45. I will have 45 automation scripts at the end of sprint 9. So on the 10th sprint we have production release, and on an average I write 5 automation scripts per sprint. In sprint 1 I will have n number of sprints. Sprint 2 I will have y number of sprints. When I average from sprint 1 to sprint 9, let's say I find 9 automation scripts, 45 automation scripts at the end of ninth sprint. So now out of 45 automation scripts, I may choose 20 high prioritized scripts. I may choose 20 high prioritized scripts and make those as a regression suite. So out of 45, I will choose 20 high prioritized scripts that is covering high prioritized functionality. I will choose 20 out of 45 and run it before production releases. That is one scope. That is another scope that we can do. We just have to reuse our existing scripts. If we are maintaining automation n model or automation n-1 model, then we will already have 45 automation scripts. This is an example. We will already have 45 automation scripts at the end of sprint 9. So we just pick 20 high prioritized scripts and run it. So that is another scope. This is the second scope, that reuse existing automation scripts and run it before prod releases. So I have mentioned the second scope also. And the third scope, scheduled automation regression test execution. I will have automation regression test execution, but that is scheduled. It could be daily, or maybe every other day, or once in a week, or once in every 2 weeks, or once in a month, or after every 2 sprint. So with a regular interval, I will have an execution. Very good scenario is we can have execution every day. This testing, the objective of this testing is to verify existing functionality which were created in earlier sprint didn't break by current sprint. Now let's say we are on sprint 4. In sprint 4, there are 5 user stories. So developer will implement these codes to the existing code. When they make this 5 user story works, they might have break something from here. There are 5 user stories here also. They may break something from sprint 2, or something from sprint 1, or something from sprint 3. That is the possibility. So if we run the entire automation suite every day, or every week, or every other week, then we will find bugs which are not identified the regular testing within the sprint. We will do testing within the sprint. We can find bugs that broke functionality from the earlier closed sprint. And even if we do not find, we will have a peace of mind that the functionality we are developing, those are working fine. The new user story is not breaking old user story or user stories which were created in the earlier closed sprint. So that is another scope. The scope is simple: create the automation suite, create a separate automation environment, and run it regularly. Best is run every day. If not possible, once in a week, or twice in a week, or once in every 2 weeks, but with a regular interval, regardless of anything. run a regression suite with a regular interval, that will give a peace of mind. If the execution comes clean, every time we run, at the end of the execution all the test cases passes cleanly, then we will have a peace of mind that the software we are developing working fine. If there is a bug, that we can also, this execution can also find those bugs which are missed by the regular sprint testing. So this is another scope that I have mentioned. This is very simple. Use a separate computer and run it with the regular interval and get cleaned execution. If not, then fix the bugs. Now another scope, that is unit testing. Unit testing is usually done by the development team. So it is maybe it is in a scope, but out of QA scope. So from the quality assurance point of view, unit testing is out of scope, because that testing is done by the development team. Development team may automate it or may not automate it. It's up to the development team. But the development team will do unit testing after when they write the code. After their code write completion, they will do the unit testing. After unit testing, they will give code to the QA team for QA testing. So development team will not give code without unit testing to the QA team, and QA team doesn't do unit testing. Now one person can say, or you can say, hey Imran, I have worked in XYZ company, and there I did unit testing as well as all the tasks I did unit testing as well as regression testing, functional testing. If that is the scenario, that means you wear two hats. You played a developer role as well as you played QA analyst role. It is clearly identified that unit testing is done by developers, not done by QA testing. But one person can play multiple roles. One person can play developer role, can play quality analyst role, business analyst role, Scrum Master role. There are many roles. Each role has a different set of roles and responsibilities, and unit testing is not part of QA scope. So this is another scope, but it is out of QA scope. And then integration testing. Integration testing. This is a scenario. Let's say there are n number of agile team running parallelly. Agile team 1 has n number of sprints, and sprint 4 is open. These 3 sprints are closed in this agile team. There is another agile team where sprint 9 is open. The previous all sprints are closed. Another agile team where sprint 16 is running. Previous 1 to 15th sprints are closed. So these are the scenarios. There are multiple agile teams running. Each team has a different sprint currently open, and this is the product backlog is full with user stories. User stories are complex and dependent on each other. User stories regardless of which team is building. So let's say this sprint has 5 user stories, and those user stories may be dependent on another user story which is developed by another team on a different sprint. That sprint may be closed or opened. So that is a scenario. But if that is the scenario, the team, let's say this team, let's say this team number 4 creates one user story in sprint 8. That user story breaks something from team number 2 that was initially created and tested by the team number 2 in sprint 4. After that they haven't tested. So who we will blame that why this the user story of sprint 4 of team 2, this one broke by the user story of sprint 8 of team 4. User history of here broke something here, so we will blame the developer of this team, or the QA of this team, or the developer of this team, or the QA. Blaming will not help. So but this is possible that a user story breaks functionality of another agile team's user story. That is possible. So for that there could have a separate team, which automation team, which will take the integrated code with a regular interval, maybe after each 2 sprint. Take the integrated code and do the testing. Those automation engineers are called automation architect in agile software development. There are many terminologies we know. They are also called automation architect. There are many roles. That role is called automation architect when the team is outside of the agile team and doing the integration testing. So the objective is fixing defect is easier and cheaper if identified by QA in an earlier sprint than identified by end user in the production environment. So that is why the company should have a separate integration team, automation integration testing team. They will do the integration and do the testing, because if this team's developer in sprint 8 breaks something which were earlier tested and created by another team in another sprint, we cannot, and the QA team will not be testing this one, and the QA team of this agile team will not be able to identify that one. That is possible, it could happen. So that's why integration testing is important. So there is another scope that we can implement automation in integration testing. That is another one, integration testing that we can implement. And also performance testing, that is also performance testing, also similar to integration testing. A separate automation engineers will be working on performance testing. Performance testing usually not tested within the sprint. Within the sprint, performance testing usually not comes in the acceptance criteria. In the acceptance criteria of the user story, if we see a user story will have acceptance criteria. In the acceptance criteria, usually performance testing requirement doesn't come, saying that the SLA has to be 0.2 second. So that type of requirement doesn't come in the acceptance criteria of the user story. And performance testing can be implemented, but that will be done by a separate independent team, independent from the agile team. The same way, integration testing should be done from an independent team, isolated from the agile teams. The same way, performance testing will be done by a separate independent isolated team from the agile teams. So there is also another scope. So I have mentioned 6 scopes. There are so many other scopes. More is better. We can implement automation in many different ways. More is better. And sometimes I see teams goes with 100% manual. That is very risky. Going 100% manual is very risky. And there must have automation testing, and more is better. At least should have automation n-1 model. At least that is the minimum should have. More is better. But I have seen there are many organization goes with 100% manual. That is really risky and unadvisable. So I have explained everything. What the objective of this tutorial video was to identify some scope and explain those scope, how we can implement automation in Agile Scrum software development, that I have mentioned. And thank you guys for watching this tutorial video. Bye.